Well, the self-driving is kind of boring.
I know. Should gun it just to keep us on our toes.
Now turn left onto Town
Did
Center.
it not see that little car?
Look, I didn't move.
Welcome to Telltales. I'm Mike Nicoletti. Every week, along with my co-hosts Jason Wallace and Hunt Lawrence, we bring you the cash flow memo. Get it at telltales.us. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to dive deep into energy, technology, and healthcare. So download the memo now and get started.
The following conversation is intended for informational purposes only. You should always do your own work to determine if an investment is suitable for you.
Oil and gas, Exhibit C and B, are going to turn into what is the state of Israel going to do on oil? There appears to be an agreement between Israel, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the U.S. for Israel to respond to the 200 missiles from a week ago, just focused on military targets. I think when they say military targets, they're talking about trying to attack the factories that make the missiles and the trucks or however they transport the missiles to Syria and Lebanon. So the price of oil with that 4 million barrels of extra capacity, and with OPEC Plus, with a plan to start this December to start feeding 2 million barrels of that capacity back to the market over time, is underway. It happens very slowly, but it is incremental oil. And when they announced the plan in May, they regretted the announcement. And then when the market softened, they pulled back the plan in August somewhere. But they've reinstated it. So with the absence of missiles going into Iran oil export facilities, it's quite likely that the price of oil is going to head lower. Question is how much lower? And I would say for the near month, it would be surprising to not see by February, March, something in the low 60s, and backwardation will continue. In other words, the future market will be lower than the current market. I would think the 26, 27 price would be in the 50, 55, 56, 57 range. What does it take to dry up that 4 million barrel a day surplus? It's not demand. If you look at Exhibit C, the increase in demand, 23 to 24 of 1,100,000 barrels, that's happened. I mean, it's already October. The increase from 102.9 to 104.7, maybe the 104.7 becomes 10.45. Maybe China, rather than going from 16.4, goes to 16.8, goes to 16.6. But 25 demand's pretty solid. The problem is that their non-OPEC oil productions is continuing to be pretty strong. That's Guyana, that's offshore Brazil, that's, West Texas. So will a $60 price on the near month and the backwardated price of 55 slow that down? On the offshore projects, generally not. The offshore projects are generally 2 or 3 year projects, and you can't slow them down. On West Texas, when you see U.S. production scheduled to go from 13.3 this year to 13.7 next year, I don't think there'll be too much impact in the near term. So it's a bit of a puzzle how to get that surplus from 4 million barrels a day down to 2 million barrels a day, which the Saudis have always taken a position that having a surplus of 2 million barrels a day is good for the world. So if there's some dislocation somewhere, the Saudis can make it up. And how solve that 2 million barrel a day problem is a little unclear. And that may be behind the decision by OPEC plus, it's OPEC plus Russia, and some other countries, to start to feed more oil into the market in December. It's minuscule per month, but the fact that they set it in place is definitely going to lay on the market. On natural gas, turning to Exhibit B, we have a similar problem of oversupply, and we don't have an OPEC in the U.S. gas business, but we do have two Marcellus producers, EQT and Chesapeake, who have curtailed 2 Bs a day, a B a day each. And they tried to bring that gas back in June when the market looked like it was getting back in the $3 range, and the market didn't, sank. So that when we got to September, the October contract, I think, was trading at $2. It's incredible for the beginning of, or the end of fall or the beginning of winter. Hopefully that'll not recur next year. But if you look on Exhibit B, that really depends on productions, which is about flat, 24 versus 23, 101.8 to 102, not increasing more than that 3 Bs a day. And that B a day from EQT and B a day from Chesapeake and the Marcellus will get back. I mean, at something like $3, we're going to see that gas. So to say that the 102 going to 105 is kind of wired, I think is right. The other problem is that the Permian, if you go up to the top of the schedule, the Permian's 18, and next time we redo the schedule will be 19. The Permian is associated gas, which gets produced alongside the oil in the Delaware Basin and the Midland Basin. That will continue to climb irrespective of the gas price, because you can't flare the gas. So as you produce the oil, you have to take care of the gas. You have to dry it out, take the NGLs out, and then ship it down to the Gulf Coast. So be cautious as I am this afternoon about commodity pricing in oil and gas. But the price for 25 has been pretty much, the futures price is pretty much in the 330, 340 range, but it's possible that will slide. As far as demand goes, power, you read and hear about the need for additional power for the data centers to run all the GPUs, to have all the AI training models. Power was flat as a board and has been increasing a little bit each year, and that'll continue. But getting power to go up 1.5 Bs a day is good, but it kind of makes up for the fact that LNG was very disappointing at 13 versus 13 last year. Now, LNG will be better next year. And if you look at supply at 105, you have the increase in power, everything else is flat, and you get a 2 Bs a day increase in LNG, next year should be fine. But gee, there are an awful lot of ifs there. I think things in the $3 range hopefully will be sustained, but in 25, we won't have a repeat of what happened to us in 24. But it's definitely not wood or cross fingers time. On Exhibit A, we're not talking politics, but it's absolutely the case that neither candidate is addressing how to close that gap at almost $2 trillion. And whoever's elected on November 5th is going to have to deal with that. I just do not believe the world capital markets are going to allow the next administration to continue to run deficits at that level. We're going to talk about Tesla today, and because that's going to occupy most of our remaining time. Jason, why don't we just cover any healthcare news?
Sure. One interesting thing that bridges healthcare and tech is the Nobel Prize for Chemistry was awarded to a couple engineers from Google's DeepMind division. So it was awarded for their work on AlphaFold. And this is an AI project, an AI algorithm that is able to predict the structure of proteins based on the chain of amino acids. So it's long been theorized and predicted that that was possible, but only with modern AI compute technology has that been practically able to be achieved. So it's a big breakthrough. It happened a couple years ago, and then we're just now seeing that the algorithms are getting good enough where they can accurately predict nearly every protein that they're running through it, and then testing. So interesting things out of that is now we can design proteins and back test what the shapes will be and what the chain of amino acids is that we need in what order to construct that protein. So hopeful for the future, we'll be able to quickly kind of engineer therapies based on the need.
Yeah, I'd say, Jason, one question on that. The process before AlphaFold was quite a bit different. It required a lot of trial and error to figure out how a protein might fold, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and now the computer can do it, in I expect seconds, minutes, and run through a ton of iterations, within a day. Whereas, I don't know how long it would take chemists to test their theory.
Yeah, a lot of time for sure.
Yeah. Not minutes.
Right.
Hey, Jason, does anyone have a particular advantage, do you think, in from the companies ranging from the large pharmaceuticals to the companies that just have one or two medicines that they make most of their revenue from?
That's a good question. I don't know if anyone has an advantage. So Google intends to license this technology. They've kind of spun it out into a new group. I can't think of the name right now, but they're going to license it to the pharma industry. So and it's still unclear what the license structure looks like. Will they get a portion of the revenue of drugs invented using AlphaFold or not? But they intend to put it to market. So it won't be exclusive to any. Pfizer won't have like an exclusivity, for instance.
Well, yeah.
It is sort of similar to you think about Vertex and how they were kind of pursuing a different path when they started than was generally common among the major drug companies. So there likely will be companies that start with a very technology-forward approach to drug development and design. So, you could see a company basically hire a much different set of initial people to do a drug development project than we're sort of used to in the modern Vertex Regeneron era.
Yeah. And there's a lot of time and money spent in the preclinical stages just in drug discovery, and hopefully this cuts a lot of that down.
What about, we talked just before we get into Tesla about NVIDIA having customers where NVIDIA would put in the whole data center. So you wouldn't be going through an Azure or Amazon Web Services. Will this stimulate that? Will a bunch of scientists trying to develop medicines insist on having their own GPUs, or what do you think will happen, Jason?
They probably will, just because of how guarded they are with their science. I don't know if that's possible, though. Google might be running this algorithm exclusively on their own homegrown chips, and if that's the case, they're not going to build a data center at anyone's facility. So you'd have to run it in the Google Compute Cloud. So that is something to look into.
We've got 12 minutes to do Tesla. Tesla's on page 1. And this is the continuation of picking the 7, 8, or 9. And We don't want to chase anyone out of any positions. We're not saying these are bad companies or companies to acquire shares in. I think it's a reproducible process. And we've done companies on page one, Untitled Chapter, and we've done Meta. And today's Tesla. We said last week it would be Tesla because Tesla had their, introducing their RoboTaxi and humanoid robots and, quite a show they put on last Thursday. So, Jason, when Apple had their show, you said you were kind of underwhelmed. What adjective would you use on the Tesla show?
Single adjective. Well, I desired more. I wanted more technical details on the RoboTaxi. He was pretty light on details on how it's constructed. The normal details they give on EVs. But then thinking about it, it's maybe you don't care about the range, you don't care about how fast it charges and stuff like that. Because if you're going to use this as on-demand transportation, you just care that it can go the 30 miles or however long your trip's going to be. And then you get out and it can do whatever it wants. It goes, charges somewhere, picks someone else up. Even if you go on a long trip, they're kind of, I don't want to use the word disposable, but it'll go halfway there. Another car meets you, you jump out, jump in the new one, and it continues the trip. And then, the original car goes to a charger. So a lot of the reports were that he didn't give enough detail. I felt that way at first too, but in today reflecting back is I think it was a good presentation. There's still, he gave the timeline of the end of next year is when this comes out. So there's he's still got probably 2 years, since he's optimistic with times, of 2 years to give us more detail on it. What do you think, Mike?
We're gonna have to bite our tongues to try to make sure that we're at least critical enough, because I'm generally an optimist, and I think that one of the things that Elon Musk does very well is he paints a picture of the future that is just, the vision is extraordinary relative to the way most people think. SpaceX, it's colonizing Mars. With the RoboTaxi event, I felt like he was selling a vision of really just making transportation, instead of this thing that sort of oppresses our existence and the way you interact with the world, as being something that you almost don't notice. And he gave the part of the presentation. They showed different parts of cities that are covered with parking lots and showed them filled with parks and stuff like that. And basically, but the point that the world will be a better place if we do this. That's something that Elon Musk is very good at doing, and it helps align the business as far as doing things that otherwise may not be short-term optimizing. So that I really liked, but I won't lament on that any farther, because I know that we need to focus on the risks associated with Tesla.
How much data center capacity do you think they need to have a couple 100,000 robotaxis in a handful of cities? Is it dependent on having enough data center or GPU capacity, or what do you think the constraints are, Jason?
I think it's a lot less than everyone's expecting for a couple of reasons. The training, they already have the capacity that they're building in Tennessee to do a lot of the training. Maybe they'll need more in the future to always improve on the algorithms, but once you're just doing inference for the vehicle to drive itself around and do the route planning and all that, I expect the car can do that internally. Elon said they're going to overbuild the capacity in it, probably planning ahead, because cars have a decade, 15-year lifespan versus what you'd expect a server in a data center at 4 to 5 years. So he's planning ahead. I think the cars will have enough compute to handle themselves. And then he actually brought up, maybe he's listening to this call, right? He brought up an idea that Mike and I have been talking about for years, is that these Teslas they're GPU servers on wheels. And he talks a lot about the hours of a car's use and how it sits idle most of the time. And we've long said, these cars sitting idle could be servers in a distributed network that could do a lot of this inferencing compute. So I expect Teslas not being driven around will park and then do some of the heavy lifting of maybe that's where route planning happens, or they're the servers that are controlling the algorithm that says which car picks up which rider in the RoboTaxi fleet. So it might not be, it might just utilize all the compute that's in the cars. That might be his data center.
How will it compete with Waymo, the Google products?
Sure. Yeah. So we'll get into a risk for Tesla in this RoboTaxi idea. It's regulatory, right? So Waymo has gone through the regulatory pathway in California in order to get certified for, I guess, level 4 self-driving, right? Currently, Tesla is only level 2, and they stopped, I believe on purpose. I think it was a strategic decision. And the difference between the two systems is the Waymo one has LiDAR. Actually, there's probably two differences. The Waymo one is also more rules-based than the Tesla one. But LiDAR gives, it's sort of like it's a power that the humans don't have. So it would be kind of a superpower that Tesla's opted to leave out of its system because of cost. And as a result, Tesla expects to be able to be almost an order of magnitude cheaper on a per mile basis than what we currently are seeing out of Waymo, or what we're expected to see out of Waymo. So you're probably expecting about close to $2 a mile out of Waymo and about 20 to 30 cents out of Tesla. So I think that from the perspective of Tesla and the risk is that it's a nice idea to say, we're just going to use cameras. But regulators may say, if you're going to put this thing on the road, it's got to be as safe as possible, and we don't care that it costs you 10 times as much. Put the LiDAR on there. Now, competitively, it'd be less expensive and easier from a technological challenge as far as like getting the self-driving system to adopt LiDAR as an improvement than it would be to go from Google's system and remove LiDAR and have to go entirely on camera. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but when Elon predicts that this RoboTaxi is going to be ready in 2026, there's a regulator that is in each state that's going to determine their actual path to market.
Okay, let's take a quick break for a message from Oak Cliff Sailing.
This is a Wednesday update for Oak Cliff that I didn't expect to be giving, but I am on the top of the Empire State Building, and we're about ready to do some yoga courtesy of Athleta, and the Women's Sports Foundation Gala is tonight. Really proud that Kimber and Mark Walter, who sponsor Courageous, are going to be honored tonight. So I'm playing hooky from Oak Cliff, and I'm really excited to share with you this beautiful, beautiful sunrise here in October. See you soon back at Oak Cliff.
And now back to the show.
Before we knock off, Jason, I asked Mike this question this morning. So ask the same question to you. How many cars does Tesla need to do to justify some number that you would tax the RoboTaxi and other businesses Tesla should be able to do? Is it I mean, Mike's answer was a little lower than I expected because it didn't greatly exceed the amount of capacity Tesla has now, which I think is in the 2 million car range with maybe 750,000 in China. Does that seem reasonable? I know Mike changed his answer to say improve margins because margins are compressed now. How would you look at that, Jason, from your own standpoint?
I guess I would think about how many cars they need to put into a market to make a RoboTaxi network work. So if they're going to launch what they're calling Cybercab, they can't just start selling them like a Cybertruck, right? Like 1 or 2 people in a neighborhood have one, and they're going to have to flood a market so that it's actually useful for you to pull up an app and use this as your mode of transportation. And to do that, they'll probably roll it out regionally, especially since there's regulatory risk. But to do that, they're going to need probably tens of thousands, or maybe 10, I'd call it 10,000 in a city. I would have to look at what, how many Uber cars are operating in a metropolitan area, but say like LA, I would think they gotta have thousands to 10,000 ready to go to launch.
So 2 points of introduction. One, they're going to supposedly turn on this ability to be a RoboTaxi on the Model 3 and the Model Y and potentially earlier models as well. So they technically already have that number just based on installed base. But I think Hunt was actually asking about how many cars do they need to sell per year to justify the valuation today, assuming that the option value of the RoboTaxi is 0. And if that wasn't the question, I'll go ahead and answer it anyway, since I didn't do the math.
I wasn't clear. I think Mike's been much clearer about in other words, if we take RoboTaxis and everything else and put it aside, and let's at $200 a share, we think that's worth $50 a share, with lots of potential delay, as you pointed out, Jason. But then we looked at the rest of the business and said, at $150 a share, how many Model Ys and Model 3s and whatnot do they have to sell? Is it about their current capacity of, say, around 2 million cars, or is it 3 million cars, or and that would get into how much additional capital costs they have in addition to, the RoboTaxi program. To my surprise, was kind of more like current capacity rather than a significant increase in current capacity. Yeah. Now, he did qualify that by saying margins. The margins we're going to see we saw in the June report and the September report at compressed. So he thinks that those margins will recover at some point, which I think is a reasonable expectation. That's the question in my mind, is from a capital point of view, how much, can you continue to finance the RoboTaxi program out of cash flow and still have free cash flow? To me, depends on whether or not you have to build factories to do another million cars, irrespective of the RoboTaxi program.
Yeah, I come to, if you do 3 million cars at a $40,000 ASP and a 20% operating margin or cash flow margin, which I don't think is crazy, that would get you to $150 a share. So today we're closer, a little over $200. That's more like a $4 million or 4 million unit run in order to hit that share price at 20 times free cash flow. So current capacity, stretch it out to 3 million, assuming a 20% or free cash flow margin. I think that's how you get there.
And now, let's have, just to close out, let's have Jason's, I think is more the enthusiast amongst the three of us, defend the dollar valuation for robo and everything else Tesla does.
Oh, I can take that. Yeah. When I think about it, it's everyone has this picture of the future that cars will drive themselves. I don't think anyone's doubting that. It's just at what timeline does that occur? As Mike mentioned, it costs Waymo $200,000 to build one of theirs, and Elon is going to have a retail price under $30,000 of his Cybercab. So maybe it costs them $20,000 to make it, an order of magnitude less. I think the only competition they'll have is Chinese automakers. So then the question that I see a lot of analysts asking is, what percent of the rideshare market will RoboTaxi capture from Uber and Lyft? And I think that's the wrong question. I think the question is, what percentage of transportation will rideshare capture of total miles driven? And I think that goes up dramatically. I think who's going to want to drive a car when you can just call one, schedule it, shows up, like an Uber, but it costs you less to do that than owning your own car. A lot less.
Especially less when insurance rates go through the roof for human drivers and come down to near zero for drivers.
Yeah, so the market is huge. I don't have a number for it, but it's got to be massive. And what value you put on it today. I mean, you're buying a future where there's self-driving cars, and you're saying that Tesla is by far the apparently the winner. No one else is even close to them, and maybe except for some companies in China, to doing this.
Jason, just before we ring off, and we'll keep the company we do next week a secret, do you think that this will be developed first in China?
I do. They won't have the regulatory risk that Tesla has here, and as Mike brought up, the personal political biases against Elon and the like. So, some company there that's partially owned by the CCP they'll be doing it. Maybe they're doing it now. I don't know, but they'll be doing it next year.
Good. Well, we're a little bit over, 5 minutes over, but everyone be well and stay healthy, and we'll tackle another company next week. Okay.
The views expressed on this podcast are the host alone and do not constitute an offer to sell or a recommendation to purchase or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security nor a recommendation for any investment product or service. While certain information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, neither the hosts nor any of their employers or their affiliates have independently verified this information, and its accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Accordingly, no representation or warranty, expressed or implied, is made as to, and no reliance should be placed on, the fairness, accuracy, timeliness, or completeness of this information. The hosts and all employers and their affiliated persons assume no liability for this information and no obligation to update the information or analysis contained herein in the future, and may or may not hold positions in the securities mentioned.